Welcome to Converge. So, a common thread that we've covered on this show is how FinServe and FinTech have evolved differently in different markets across the world, whether that's due to local regulations, consumer preferences, or historical trends. And that's also why a lot of FinTech firms have tended to stay in their local region. But in the last couple of years, we've seen more FinTech challengers start to expand globally, with spend platform Brex being one of those leading the charge. So, I'm really happy to be joined by Erica Dorfman, who is the head of global financial products at Brex. Welcome to the show, Erica. Could you share with our listeners some of your own career background that led you to your current role, and also tell us a little bit about Brex and what you do?
Yeah, no, thank you so much, Alex, for having me on Converge. I've spent my professional life in financial services, and I think each iteration of my career just getting closer and closer to the actual building of products. And I had the opportunity to join SoFi pretty early on in its history, which was a really remarkable time in fintech. And at SoFi, I led the capital markets team, and that experience really expanded my perspective in all the ways our financial system is just incredibly antiquated, whether that's the fixed income market to corporate treasury and liquidity management. And after SoFi, I was the CFO of a company called Tally Technologies. And we were using that standard operating pack at the time, which was an SVB bank account, reimbursement software, personal cards, because none of the corporate cards had rewards, so that didn't work. And that was actually right around the time that Brex was doing its beta launch. And I knew the team really well. And so we'd started using that card, and it was a great fit for our use case, but it didn't solve all of our pain points yet because it didn't have expense management in sort of a full way, and it didn't have a bank account. But it turns out Brex was actually in the process of getting started building that bank account. And some of my former colleagues asked me to come over and help lead the launch of that and the cash management product. And just knowing from my own experience how needed the product was in the market, and just having a great deal of respect and admiration for the team at Brex, it was impossible to say no. So I came over the summer of 2019. So I've been at Brex now for almost 5 years. And I think have been able to sit in a huge number of different roles at the company, from partnerships to card issuing and Brex Cash. And, right now my team, as you mentioned, is responsible for building and developing Brex's financial products, inclusive of our global strategy.
Awesome. So Brex probably came to a lot of people's attention as a corporate credit card, specifically one that was designed for startups who might not have had the credit history that traditional credit providers would require. So now you've evolved a bit, and you offer also expense management, travel booking, business accounts. What's the unifying vision for Brex that is encompassing all of this? And is it looking like Brex sort of wants to become a global bank of its own? How do you see this evolution taking
Yeah,
place?
and if you were in San Francisco anytime like late 2018, early 2019, you would definitely feel that way from the billboard campaign that we ran across the whole city. But you mentioned a number of really amazing products that we've launched, and I think whether that's the Brex business accounts to bill pay to travel, the unifying principle here is really the giving customers a single platform for all of their core expense management and payments needs. And I think the amazing thing about Brex is, even from the very beginning in our core card product, we were the first to have receipt capture, attaching memos directly to the expense, having a direct connection into NetSuite, giving customers the opportunity to put access controls into an app. And that all sounds like core expectations today, but in 2018 that wasn't something that you had really accessible on a corporate card. And so for us, that expense management and a single platform to do all of your business needs for expense management and for payments is really like core to what we want to offer. And that means travel, that means bill pay, that means business accounts. Being a global bank isn't. I think we will be able to deliver that best value for customers. We did go through an ILC application that was, a really good learning experience, but ultimately probably not the way in which we'll be able to deliver the most value to our customers.
Yeah, it makes sense. It sounds like you have a good focus. So, what have been the biggest challenges that you've run into as you've expanded to providing your products and services globally? Have you run up against specific roadblocks in certain markets?
I think when you look at the global financial landscape, there are they're all really different, right? So every country has its own payments infrastructure, own banking infrastructure, a lot of different regulatory environments. And so as much as, it's ubiquitous to go around and use your credit card everywhere, then to actually move money in those countries can actually be really challenging. So, India is a great example of where like it's an amazing fintech environment and there's so many unbelievable companies there and a lot of innovation, whether that's UPI or all the QR code payments that they actually just digitized amazingly well. It's also not really set up for foreign companies to come in very easily and move money in and out of India. So that's a challenging one. Same thing with China. We've had really great success working with partners and being able to engage in some of these markets. So it's like a fun problem, right? Where you have to just figure out how do you give the broadest global coverage.
Yeah, yeah, a fun problem indeed. So, how universal would you say the needs of global customers are when it comes to managing their spend? What are the common needs that you see, and how widespread are they?
I would say it's almost entirely consistent, right? Because when you think about what a business needs to do, you have bills, you have employees, you have to travel for, work, you need to report expenses, you need to file taxes. All of those things are consistent whether, a company is based in the US or has teams all over the world or they're based outside of the US. I think where we've been able to develop a really amazing product and a pretty differentiated financial product is serving teams that actually, they're based in the US, but they have a really global organization. So they may have US operations and then also operations in the Philippines and Brazil and Europe and being able to give all of those teams the same experience and manage those financials on a central platform, put their policies in one place, pay out of their local bank account so they're not doing cross currency. All of that is actually like really, really innovative. And even today, if you wanted to do that with like a large global bank, you would be able to do some of it, right? You might be able to do the card and the holding bank accounts in those countries and paying, but you wouldn't be able to do the expense management. You'd have to do the expense management on another platform. So that just creates an obligation for finance teams to then have multiple partners and go integrate and change context and give different people access, pay for multiple services. And so with Brex, what we've been able to do is say, hey, let's put this all in one place. Let's give all of your employees a single experience. Let's make onboarding and the experience of using Brex really easy. And let's fit the need to what you have in that country, right? If it's normal for you to do reimbursements there, that's fine if that's what you prefer to do. But we have this great corporate card product and it works everywhere and it works really well. So you might want to use that even, if you haven't used it before.
Yeah, that's really awesome. So, what does the typical Brex customer look like? Are you primarily still building for startups and high growth companies, or have you expanded your market a bit more since I first discovered you guys? What is the customer base evolving to these days?
It's really evolved actually from just that core early tech company. That's still a really, really important customer for us because what happens with a lot of these tech companies is, they're venture backed and the power law is very real, right? So the objective is for them to become really large companies and we want them to stay on our platform throughout that life cycle. But if we can serve a company from the very beginning, also through, their IPO and public existence, then we are also able to go out and acquire public companies like Coinbase and DoorDash, who are customers that actually were already public when they came onto our platform. And so we have the ability to serve these customers throughout their life cycle. And that, means that we have to be able to address these different needs. But ultimately the core customer is someone that wants a modern finance platform. They want to be doing things in a technical way and they don't want to have sort of as many different tools as it are required if you sort of go back to, the old way of doing things.
Yeah. So you already have a pretty broad product offering. So how in your role as the head of global financial products are you thinking about what to build next? Is it an expansion on what you already have, deepening the products that already exist, or are you constantly, or at least consistently, year over year, looking at new products to build and new areas to add value? What sort of emphasis does your role have in those areas?
Yeah, I mean, building new capabilities is really really important for us. I mean, obviously maintaining the great products that we already have, and reliability is critical to any financial product. But offering things like a lodge card, which we're launching in a month or so, which will enable enterprise customers to use their Brex card with their TMC and for travel management outside of the Brex travel platform or in addition to it. Um, but that's another card type. Doing things like having a better procurement infrastructure with procure to pay and bill pay, and allowing bill pay to happen in sort of a multimodal fashion, right? Whether that's outside paying, from a bank account outside of Brex, using a Brex cash account, or using, a Brex card to do that. So for us, it's really about how do we get customers to spend using Brex in as many ways as is efficient and effective for their business.
So creating that ecosystem where they stay within the Brex suite of services, it makes sense. Yeah. So one thing that interests me, in the past, finance teams, CFOs and their teams didn't always benefit from the types of innovation, or at least the level of innovation in software as a service, that other parts of companies like sales, marketing, where I work, would have seen with software as a service, and how much has been provided to streamline what we do. But now it seems like Brex is sort of at the front of this group of companies and this new wave that's bringing technologies to market for CFOs and their teams, leveraging AI, which we'll talk about in a sec. And I can think of several tackling this area in addition to your company, such as financial forecasting and planning platforms that are really trying to simplify and make the whole planning and forecasting process transparent, decomplexifying a paper bound process, and making it more visible and understandable to the whole company. Does this effort to innovate in the area of the CFO's job wing present unique challenges? What challenges have you run into as you break barriers innovating in this space? And what's it been like tackling these types of issues as a quote early disruptor?
Yeah, I think it's long overdue, right? And I think finance teams are having, previously led finance teams and been on finance teams. It's sort of, there's a workhorse attitude of like, yes, we can just do this. And actually, Excel is a great tool, right? There's a reason why Microsoft is as large of a company as it is. It's a really dynamic tool, and so it's used all over the place on financial teams. But when you think about where there are amazing opportunities to gain insights, how you spend money as an organization, tells you so much about both your opportunities and where you can grow, where you can save, and where you can invest, and what those investments mean to your business, right? So when you think about marketing software and you say, okay, well, great, I can optimize my AdWords spend, or I can optimize my CAC, my LTV, whatever, that's great. If you can translate that not just to one, ad platform, but also all of your marketing spend, right? And then you can link that across different teams and across different markets and gain insights from all of that dollar spend, whether that's on a card or a bill pay or, some other, reimbursement. All of that insight really gives you the opportunity to run your business more efficiently and operate differently. So I think for us, when we think about why is it necessary, or how do we give more power back to finance teams, it's really about creating that visibility and then reducing the amount of time that teams are spending doing tasks that can be automated or that are like pretty menial and not fun for anyone, right? A lot of the ways, and you mentioned AI, I'm sure we'll talk about this in a second, but when we think about Brex budgets and a lot of the innovation that we've done on the expense management side, a lot of that is just pulling forward work that used to happen at the end of the expense management cycle, right? So if you had to assign a receipt or write out a memo, assign an expense to a certain, vendor or category, and you did all of that, people would wait till the end of the month. It's not very fun. You've got all these paper receipts. You've got to like spend time doing the allocation. And then someone on the finance team goes out and they've got to go correct, maybe a mistake that you've made and manually check that. So if we can pull all of that up front and actually reduce the amount of time that both an employee and a finance team member is spending doing any of that work, it's incredibly valuable to the organization because you actually have like really smart people that are sitting there with receipts. Like no one, that's not a good use of anyone's time.
Well said. So, on that note, AI is obviously making this a lot easier for many companies already. AI is something Brex seems to be investing in heavily. It's all over your marketing front pages. And I can imagine the use case for AI with expense management is pretty compelling. Oftentimes, those expense reports sit with the department, managing them for weeks, and many would really welcome a automated solution to streamline those approvals. So, how much is the interest in this being driven by customer demand versus making your own operations more efficient? Is it equally being driven by both? And does it hold as much promise as it does internally as it does for the customers that you work with?
Yeah, I mean, I think both, right? I think there's a huge amount of value and probably certainly more value that accrues to our customers. Hopefully, we've been using machine learning for a long time as it relates to things like credit modeling and fraud detection, and so the industry as a whole, right, financial services has a lot of this embedded. But when we think about the customer and operational aspects to AI, really, really amazing opportunities and a lot of that already in the product today. We've got an incredible AI team. And when you think about even just like natural language questions, right? How do you like you mentioned the example of an expense report, being able to just ask a question like, hey, what was my spend on marketing last month? If you can do that as a manager or as an admin in your account, if you're like a 10-person company, you might be the CEO and the entire finance team, right? So you don't have someone else to go in and do that for you. You want to ask that question. You don't want to go spend an hour of your time digging through numbers. We can do that for you in a really quick and efficient way. Similarly, if you're an incredibly large company, that's actually a pretty complex question, right? Which department, what type of spend, what GL codes. So if we can answer that really well for you with a single pass, then you might save, a couple of teams time going through and analyzing that and maybe not even having a real-time answer as we would have in the system that is actually tracking the expenses as they come in, where you don't need to go out and download them. I think from an internal perspective, I'll give you one example. One of the guys on my team built out this amazing tool for us to track uh, customer inquiries and actually align them into sort of categories that we could then go out and solve and correct. And it seems like a relatively simple problem, but it would have taken like a pretty long time for us to do internally manually because you've got to read through all those comments and then contextualize it. But so you can train this model pretty quickly. And it's been incredibly valuable because we've gone out and made real product improvements from just the ability to better understand how our customers are interacting and asking questions.
That's amazing. Yeah. With all these capabilities and potential capabilities in finance, I can honestly say that I can see it in my mind's eye, the AI CEO becoming a thing of the future. It may or may not, be in the next early few years, but we're pretty close to scratching the surface of a whole new can of worms of AI potential in terms of management of budget and expense management, and basically the things that the C-suite themselves wring their hands over on a regular basis. So it's really just breathtaking, a lot of the capabilities that are being taken off the plate of executives and back end workers alike. So you're also an advisor to a number of startups and a scout for a venture capital firm called Greylock. What kind of new companies excite you the most right now from that perspective? And what are the big problems in fintech that you're excited to see these startups tackle?
Yeah, I mean, right now, I really like companies that are sort of doing one of two things. One is really attacking sort of the infrastructure that still is very antiquated. And I know that I said that earlier, but like really there's so much within our financial system. Trillions and trillions of dollars move every day on, systems of money movement and systems of record that are incredibly old and outdated. And so ways in which we can, reduce the time for transactions to process, reduce the cost of processing those transactions. Simple things like, okay, international money movement, right, for consumers that can actually go onto a card, right, instead of being done through Swift or a really expensive service that takes a huge tax out of both sides of the transaction. So I think there's a lot of ways in which money movement just has the opportunity to modernize. And then the embedded finance, aspect, I think there are so many ways for enterprise and B2B to really use fintech as a means of increasing the value capture or value generation to customers. There's a company that I advise called Silo that is really on the working with growers and distributors of produce, and their goal is to make sure that both sides of those transactions have great market pricing, that they can help with working capital, but ultimately they started as a marketplace. And so I think there's so many different aspects of B2B services that still have a lot of money movement within the system that can be actually put into the core offering and yield a better pricing for both sides of it.
Yeah, I couldn't agree more. We've also got our eyes on those types of companies tackling those challenges. Of course, we sit in that sweet spot between the payee and the recipient, and we move global money all over for 200 plus countries and territories. So having more seamless operations and more efficiency in those areas and speed and transparency is a really exciting thing about what's to come in the next decade. So thanks so much for sharing Brex's story and for giving us an insight into the amazing work you guys are doing over there. Keep it up. And Erica, it was truly a pleasure. Thank you again.
Thanks so much, Alex.